In the old Persian tellings collected in the Book of Kings, heroes were not praised because they were gentle. They were praised because they endured. Rostam was such a name. His strength was sung in every caravanserai from the Caspian to the Indus, and his faults were sung with them because a hero without fault is only a statue. This is not the whole life of Rostam. It is the day that broke him. It is the story of a son he never raised and a recognition that arrived with blood on the plain. The Persians and the Turanians had quarreled since kings learned to write their grudges in stone. War was habit, single combat was custom, and fate, in these tales, is never late. It is only precise. If you remember anything, remember an armband given in darkness, a young champion who wanted a name, and a father who learned too late that the enemy he had wounded was his own answer to the sky. The poets who sang this tale did not sing it to make you comfortable. They sang it so kings would think twice before they sent sons to fields where fathers might already be standing. Before Sohrab was born, Rostam came to the court of Tahmineh in Turan. He came as heroes come, without warning and with dust on his cloak. Tahmineh was a princess of clear mind. She knew the stories told about Rostam, and she knew what a knight with such a guest might leave behind. She did not pretend otherwise. When Rostam rode away at dawn, she kept one thing he had worn on his arm, a band of gold and leather stamped with the mark of his house. She told her women, "If a child comes, let him wear this so his father will know him when the world brings them together." She did not say, "If the world brings them as enemies." Mothers leave that part unspoken. Sohrab grew tall and fair and fierce, with shoulders built for the work of war and eyes that asked questions no drill master could answer. He heard Rostam's name the way other boys hear the name of the sun. He wanted to find the hero. He wanted to stand beside him. He did not yet know that legends also stand across from you with a spear leveled at your heart. Tahmineh watched him train from a balcony and said nothing of the armband. She had given him a name and a story. She could not give him the hour when stories turn into wounds. When Sohrab came to command men, he moved like someone who had already decided the outcome. His soldiers loved him because he did not waste their lives for ornament. The king of Turan watched this youth and saw a weapon sharper than any treaty. He set Sohrab at the front of a host and pointed toward the border where Persia ended and argument began. Sohrab rode out each morning with the armband hidden under his armor. He told his captains, "I do not seek land. I seek the man who bears my face in older lines." They laughed kindly, as captains do when youth speaks in poetry. They did not laugh when he broke their practice spears before noon. Word reached the Persian camp that a young champion of Turan had thrown down every challenger. Old warriors looked at one another and thought of Rostam, who was no longer young but was still the answer when the question was death. The king of Persia sent for him. Rostam came up from his tent with the slow confidence of a man who had never yet met his match. He did not ask the boy's name. He asked only whether the spearwork was real or theater. The scouts said real. Rostam nodded once, the way men nod when a door they hoped would stay closed has just opened. The plain between the armies was wide and honest. No trees offered excuses. The sky was the color of a blade not yet drawn. Heralds rode the line and called the old insults. Sohrab sat on a black horse at the Turanian front and felt his heart beat as if it were trying to arrive somewhere ahead of his body. Rostam walked his horse out from the Persian ranks. He did not wear the armor of a king. He wore the armor of a man who mends problems others have made permanent. The two champions studied each other across the dust. Neither saw kinship. Each saw the next verse of a song everyone already knew. The armies made a ring. Single combat was law on that plain. To break the ring was to break honor. And honor was the only wall some kingdoms owned. Sohrab lowered his spear. Rostam lowered his. The dust rose as if the earth itself held its breath. Horses stamped. A hawk crossed the sky without choosing a side. Somewhere behind the Persian line, an old soldier told a younger one that champions die so armies can go home without dying in full. They met like weather, spear to shield, shield to spear, the old grammar of war. Sohrab was young and astonishing. Rostam was older and patience in a champion is a kind of cruelty. The first pass split the air. The second drew sparks from mail. Men who had seen 100 fights stopped pretending they were not afraid for their side. Sohrab pressed hard because youth believes speed is the same as destiny. Rostam gave ground the way a cliff gives ground to the sea, one measured step at a time. He watched the boy's footwork. He watched the angle of the spear. He did not watch the armband hidden under the vambrace, because war is not written to leave room for jewelry. On the third pass, Rostam's spear found the gap below the ribs. Not deep enough to kill at once, deep enough to end the dance. Sohrab staggered but did not fall. He smiled with blood on his teeth and said again, as if repetition could change the meaning. Rostam felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. Champions learn to read bodies the way scribes read lines. This body was young. This body was absurdly, insultingly brave. They grappled from horseback to earth. Dust blinded the ring. Sohrab's strength was the strength of a season that has never known frost. Rostam's was the strength of a man who had learned frost by name. When they broke apart, Sohrab tore at his own arm guard. He pushed the metal aside and showed the band beneath. Gold dulled by sweat and struck with a mark Rostam had not seen in years, but had never forgotten. Rostam's spear arm dropped as if the sinew had been cut with a word. The plane went silent in the way a house goes silent when a plate breaks. Sohrab said, "I am your son. I wanted you to know me before I knew you as an enemy." The sentence arrived too late to be a rescue and too early to be a blessing. Rostam cried out in a voice that was not the voice of Persia's champion. He reached for Sohrab as men reach for a cup they have knocked from a table. The armies did not move. Even war has moments it refuses to touch. Sohrab's breath came in shallow coins, each one expensive. Rostam begged the sky for time the way ordinary men beg for rain. The sky gave nothing it had not already priced. Rostam laid Sohrab in the shade of his own banner. He tore cloth. He called for water. He called for the healing balm he carried since the days when heroes still believed balm could argue with fate. Sohrab looked up at a sky that had suddenly become too high and said the simple things the dying say when they are still trying to protect the living. "Do not grieve in front of them," he whispered, meaning the ring of soldiers who would carry the story back to two kingdoms. "Tell my mother you saw the armband. Tell her I found you." Rostam promised what no promise could keep. His hands shook on the wound the way hands shake when the body refuses to accept what the mind already knows. Sohrab died before the sun moved the width of a spear. Rostam remained kneeling long after the light changed. The Persian king spoke his name twice and received no answer. The Turanian host withdrew as if the plain itself had become forbidden ground. No one cheered. Victory without cheering is a particular kind of defeat, and both camps learned it on the same afternoon. They carried Sohrab from the field on a bier covered with cloaks that were not fine enough for what they held. Rostam walked beside the body because riding would have put him above his son one last time. Shahnameh would hear the news in a palace where she had once kept an armband against a day she hoped would be gentle. The Book of Kings does not pretend this story teaches a comfortable lesson. It teaches that fame is not family, that war makes strangers of the people we should have known, and that recognition is not mercy simply because it is true. Rostam lived many years after, and the poets say his laughter was never quite the same sound again. Some tragedies end with a funeral. This one ends with a question that outlives every king in the tale. What if the armband had been seen one pass sooner? If you remember anything, remember the armband under the armor and the plain where two champions met before they met as father and son. This was Forgotten Fables. This was Rostam and Sohrab, the tragedy Ferdowsi set in the Book of Kings, retold for those who still believe the cruelest fate is the one that tells the truth too late.